Hi, everyone. Today, we've got a very special guest back with us, which is Briana Gunn, who's a naturopath in Western Australia, who always looks after people with tick-borne infections. And today, we're getting together to try and chat about the latest Senate inquiry. So that's going to be the topic of discussion for today. So welcome, Briana.
Thank you. Thank you for having me back.
Pleasure. So where shall we start with this? Shall we start with, I guess, because this is a huge topic. It's yes, there's been some good reports put out. I have to sort of say a big thank you to the LDAA for sure, because they've put out a great blog post about this, and I'll put some links down about it later on. There's also been some articles as well, so I'll put some links down about that. But we thought we'd like to have a chat and dive a little bit deeper into this as well.
Mm.
Some of the things, there's some good things that come out about it, and there's definitely some things that the patient community has to sort of follow up. What's quite interesting, like the 2016 Senate inquiry that I found, was that both of these have happened around polling time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
2016, we had
I
that.
caught that as well.
And they had to complete that in 2017, the final report.
Mm-hmm.
But this time we have got the final report out where there's 7 recommendations, and these quite a few of the recommendations are kind of a repeat of the first 12, some of the first 12 recommendations.
From the
But yeah,
2016,
2016, yeah.
findings. And those weren't actioned.
They weren't.
Why they're back here again.
Look, the Department of Health felt that they were actioned by producing this CAT clinical pathway.
Mm-hmm.
But the recent Senate inquiry, what was good about that, and a huge thank you to the people who initiated that, the senators
Mm-hmm.
initiated that, that's great. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the women there who was also involved in 2016 inquiry also was involved in this one as well. And I
Mm.
can sense that she was quite frustrated by a number of the things. So it's been passed back to the Department of Health saying, naughty boys, you haven't done it properly, you need
Mm-hmm.
to do it again. But that's where the patient community has to sort of really follow up to make sure they can implement these. Not sure how we're going to do that, but it is something we're going to have to continue to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got about 1,000 things open here, and you'll see my head going off to the side of my other screen with stuff. Do you want to start off with what you've found with this in perhaps the list of the recommendations and go over what you feel about those?
Yeah,
One, perhaps?
definitely. So the other people I'd like to, you know, thank,
Yeah,
express gratitude for are the people who made submissions,
yeah,
especially our patients. The executive functioning to do a submission is that takes emotionally, energetically, that's a hard thing to get done. And then actually sitting at computers, typing stuff out, making it logical, it's emotional, it's painful, digging it all up for the past. You guys did a great job. And I think there's a whole chapter at the back of the findings that really go through and show very clearly how much this patient population suffers, how much it costs them in health, relationships, money, how difficult life can be with these things. So, yeah, you guys did a fantastic job getting so many submissions in and really expressing yourself so clearly.
yeah. I do think, though, that there was a sense of cynicism about our patient community. We had over 1,200 the first time, and this time we only had around 200 or so, I think.
Yeah, it was 259.
259, yeah. But look, those who did put in some really good sort of things as well. I read through quite a lot of them, and look, thanks to the people who turned up live as well.
Mm,
They put some good points forward, that's for sure.
mm,
It got quite emotional at times, for sure. It was
mm.
over 8 hours with that. We ran late,
Yeah,
and it is live. I'll put the link to that YouTube video as well if you want to sit back and listen to that. Might put you to sleep, but still, there's a lot involved in that. But there's a lot of
mm,
people who put their heart on the sleeve in regards to that submission.
yeah, yeah.
But we got 7 recommendations out of that. Do you want to talk about recommendation? What do you want to talk about? What the terms of reference were first, or just go straight to the
I
recommendations?
think we can jump into what they're recommending.
Yeah, yeah,
So the first recommendation is that the Department of Health and Aged Care work with state and territory governments to develop a public education and awareness campaign to provide more information on the treatment and prevention of tick bites and the symptoms of tick-borne illnesses. So fantastic. Yes, that's exactly what we need. We need kids to know what this looks like. We need GPs to know what this looks like. We need your local chiropractor to know what this looks like. We need everybody to understand what ticks do in Australia. And I loved that they included all tick infections. So
Yeah.
often we get bottlenecked here because we're only looking at where the Lyme exists in Australia, what the Borrelias are doing here. No, no, no. Let's look at the Babesia, the Bartonella, the Ehrlichia, the Anaplasma, the Rickettsias, all the stuff we know we have in our ticks. We know it transmits to humans. Dial down on that for every GP. We don't just have to rely on one infectious disease doctor in every 3 states who's
Yeah.
got some idea of what to do for Rickettsia that's more than 10 days of doxycycline.
Yeah.
So I liked that. What
Yeah.
do you think?
For me, Ticna was really established as its primary aim is to educate the general public.
Mm.
Because I think if more people who go camping, who go caravanning, who go bushwalking and trekking and scouts and Girl Guides and everybody who heads out into the bush in Australia, they need to be aware that you can get bitten by ticks. Look, you know, as much as I'm a part of this community and I'm sort of focusing on that, it still is a little bit of a rarity to be bitten by a tick, but there are endemic areas in Australia. And if people know where those endemic areas are, which really is our coastal region, of course, that's our highest population regions as well. The ticks really are expanding in area, but they're also expanding in the number of infections that they carry. There's a broader range of infections which we know very little about. There's only 2 infections that are confirmed, you know, that they recognise, which are your range of rickettsias and then the Q fever officially. And the rickettsias are in every state in Australia. They say the most dangerous one is the Queensland tick typhus, which is, of course, in the Queensland area and northern New South Wales areas as well. But you can get bitten in any state at pretty much any time of the year. Yep. I mean, there are peak areas through your summer period, which is, of course, where your holidays are. You could live in Melbourne, like what I did. Live in Melbourne, go to Queensland on a holiday, not know anything about ticks, inadvertently get bitten up there, not know that I was bitten. That's another thing. People don't even realise they get bitten. Come back from their holiday and then get sick and they have no idea, no clue. So that Ticna primary aim is that. So my kind of personal advocacy is really a personal advocacy kind of approach rather than Ticna's main aim with that. And look, the LDA is great. They've got information on their website. Eventually Ticna will get up its website, but it's up to me to write and research the whole thing. It's 3/4 of the way there. But look, that's great. I emphasise that quite a lot.
I think that's a good recommendation. I mean, my concern with all of this is what's the time frame? Who's checking back in on it? Who's overseeing it? It's all the same. Yes, I love it. Who's going to do it and when? And how do we know it's done properly? Is the questions that came to me for all of these recommendations.
There isn't any state and federal uniformity. When you look at every one of the state and federal websites in regards to ticks, it's a hodgepodge of information.
Yeah, and dangerous.
Yeah.
How do you take a tick off you? Some of the guidelines out of New South Wales are outright dangerous. Using a freeze spray. No, that you freeze a tick, it's going to regurgitate into you.
Yeah.
Don't freeze your ticks.
That is a bit of a controversial one. I mean, it is recommended by the government at the moment. They've taken up the tiaras recommendations. I mean, they've got
somebody who makes a lovely tick spray in a pharmaceutical lobby group, did they have any influence here? Why are we now recommending a dangerous product? It seems worth considering.
Yeah,
the influence here.
It's interesting you raise that point, and I will point out that Mackenzie Kwok, when we did have that conversation together, he's a researcher. This is his field, his knowledge. I mean, I am not a researcher. I'm not a medical practitioner or anything like that. I don't know anything about this. I only look at sort of stuff. Having a science background, it's easy for me to read this information and cognitively being reasonable as well compared to so many others, sadly. He was saying that he's not 100% sold on it either. And I think Ticna's recommendation is we'll say, look, if you've got the free spray and you're certainly in the Sydney area whereby you've got a high chance of that alpha-gal or the tick meat allergy or the paralysis, then take that and trial using that as well. But eventually, you know, when I've spoken to people who have used the free sprays, I'm kind of getting a little bit of a different direction. But anyway, it's a part of the education and preventing tick bites as
It
well.
is.
Some of the times that the tick doesn't die and doesn't fall off, and you still have to use some fine point tweezers to manipulate and to get out, not the head of a tick. A tick doesn't actually have a head, but the head part, I guess.
A little proboscis.
Yep, that thing. and pull it directly out without squeezing the tick's body. That is the most important thing. And I think that's where people are scared of, where you squeeze the fat tick's body and you can push back whatever's in the gut.
Because they have very different, they don't have the same chambers in their bodies that a complex organism like a human does. When you look at a little diagram of them, they're very simple inside. They don't have the same valves. The stomach, you squeeze it, it comes back out the front.
Yep.
And dumps whatever it is into you. The other problem with ticks is they're feeding, because they don't have those valves that change the stomach and separate it from the mouth part.
Yeah.
The blood's coming in, the blood's recycling through their stomach. There's a bit of backflow. They're a nightmare. They're dirty little beasties.
Yeah. Look, I would really like to see some further research on the free spray. It's not used anywhere else in the world. They've got alpha-gal huge time in the United States. It's big over there. It's only starting to get noticed the last few years, and it's
starting to get big here. In my New South Wales patients, I am seeing it more and more. I did not see it 8 years ago, and now I'm seeing it alarmingly often.
Yeah, it's quite interesting that more people, kind of like a bee sting, there's going to be some people who are going to be completely allergic to it and others who are not. So it's a hit and miss thing. And this is the thing where prevention is so important. You don't know what the ticks are carrying. You don't know if you're going to get alpha-gal. The only way to prevent is to not get bit. And that the number one thing for me is always wear repellent. If you do nothing else, that's the number one thing you can do. Like mosquitoes, just wear the repellent, and
don't get bit.
The cardin or this lemon natural thing is sort of the three big things that have been recommended at the moment. Other ones, they're not quite as efficient as that. But finishing off in the free spray, I'd love to see the thing whereby they can sort of show that by freezing it, it actually
holds the toxins inside itself, so it doesn't. Whereas I don't think it does. I think we're going to end up stimulating annoyance in the little beastie, and it's going to, and the stress response, dump its stomach back into you.
Yeah, I felt that would aggravate the tick, and I'd go, well, what the heck's this? And suddenly, like putting a match on it and everything. So, but look, they've got the experts at Tiara who sort of say that it's not the case. I'd love to have a chat with them about that. But I would also would like to see some more research so we can prove it, because if it does absolutely freeze and block off, the thing to stop stuff going through,
right,
that would be a pretty good game changer, wouldn't it? And the rest of the world may pick that up, but at this stage I'm kind of I don't know. The second thing you can use, of course, is the fine point tweezers, is really to remove that tick safely as soon as you can.
I think that's the easiest.
It is, but you need to know how to do that properly. Certainly no Vaselines, no creams, apart from if they're the tiny little nymph ticks, you can put the pyrimethamine cream on it. They don't like that, and they tends to kill them, basically. So that is a good thing. So finish up with the recommendation 1.
But even that is an interesting thing, because you and I straight away, what is the right way? So it's another place we've got to spend a couple $1 million and do some studies. What is the way to get the ticks off safely? Where do they regurgitate? Where do they not? What ages and sizes of which species of ticks do which behaviours in which situations and circumstances? So again, now we've just discovered that's another place we've got to spend a lot of money and do research to find out, how do we get ticks off people? That's not covered in these recommendations.
It's not, but I guess that's where us talking about this as a patient community who've got some knowledge from myself, just reading through this and understanding this to the best of my ability, we can pass it on and make suggestions to people. That's why I think a learned patient community is really important to be involved in this. We've got some really smart people. I mean, the LDAA, hats off to them for the years that they've been pushing all of this. They've got some smart cookies there, and passionate people, and all of them are quite sick.
They're sick, and you don't end up in this world unless you've got a personal touch with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing what they've been doing all these, longer than what I've been doing it for as well. I've come in kind of late to this as well, and I work alongside them, and they're some great people there, so they've got that information there. So look, at the moment, what Ticna is recommending is both. is to say, look, if you've got the free space, please use that, especially in that. If you can't get to that area, your skin's too sensitive, then look at getting help with the fine point tweezers, or let's keep it attached. Don't aggravate the tick and get yourself to a doctor, because even if it's underneath your shirt, the rubbing of the shirt can aggravate it and annoy it, and can prematurely put toxins and infections back into your body. And Tiara, interestingly, only talks about the alpha gal stuff and the paralysis and tick paralysis. It's a little bit annoying because there definitely are infections, which also I feel should be mentioned on their website as well. So the infections too. So that's just my noticing of that. So yeah, we're going to have to, again, patient community is going to have to follow up about this and say, look, who's going to do it, who's involved in that, who's in charge with that, what's happening, what's your timeframes. So, recommendation 2.
Yeah, committee recommends that the Department of Aged and Healthcare, or Health and Aged Care, sorry, fund research to collect data on the prevalence, frequency, and geographical distribution of ticks. Yes, absolutely. We need to do that. I am in Australia. I am in Western Australia. Pete, have you ever seen a study talking about West Australian ticks?
There's been some, but it's based on rickettsias.
Hardly any.
It's hardly
New South Wales gets looked at over and over and over, and Queensland on the coast gets looked at over and over and over. WA, we've got unique tick-borne relapsing fevers here. Tests like Alzheimer's and Guarini overseas. Can we come over here and check what borrelias are in our ticks, please?
Yeah. Look, there has been some from ARL and the Graves community. They've done quite a lot of research on rickettsias, and he's sort of the person who knows about rickettsias and so forth. But we do need to know what else is in these ticks. And look, that calls for constant surveillance. There should be at least 12 months surveillance in different states, in different areas, just checking the spread of the ticks, the number of the ticks, what infections are in the ticks, so we can create warnings. I mean, within Australia, I've been following this guy, Professor Cameron Webb, amazing man, and he's been doing this for mosquitoes. And he seems to be a one-man show because he's always over social media, and I'm following him and I'm posting stuff to Ticna about mosquitoes, because I've also got a section in there about mosquito-borne diseases, which is vector-borne diseases too, and they're quite important for everybody to know too. And look, if you use the same prevention for mosquitoes, luckily most of it would also help prevent you for ticks too. But we need a Professor Cameron Webb and his community, and I think he works for the New South Wales Pathology, and he's out there, all the time collecting mosquitoes, checking the mosquitoes under a microscope, checking for the infections, and then from that they place warnings that they've found, especially at the moment, the Japanese encephalitis. So I think it's important that we also get that for the tick community as well.
Absolutely.
We've
and
completely ignored
tick
it.
diseases cross international borders. We didn't used to have Ehrlichia canis here, and now we do. So we know that tick diseases are coming in from overseas all the time. Anybody who comes infected could potentially then be the donor that the tick eats that shares that to somebody else. So if we get an infected human here with an overseas borrelia, it now gets into our ticks if they get bit here. So, I mean, we need to be surveying this constantly and across all states and multiple areas in each state to really see what is in our ticks. And that needs to be done twice a year, I think. We need to really keep this data up. So, great. But again, who's going to do it? Just the Department of Health and Aged Care are to fund research and collect data. What funding? How much funding? How much data? Just one snapshot, just a happy little Polaroid of, one tick population once? Or are we going to do a bit more data over how many years, how many states, how many location sites in each state? It just seemed like, yes, I agree with the recommendation. Fantastic. Now I want to see it actually implemented to a high standard, because that's where we're going to save lives and suffering.
Look, they've put down big picture stuff, but they haven't put down how they're going to implement this and who's going to implement this to the full thing. And I guess the Senate people on that, which who are politicians, don't really know that. They're hoping that the departments that they've set up within government will know how to do these things, but a lot of times they may not.
I'd love to see that next document now that goes to the Health and Aged Care Department and see what are the timeframes for them to act, what that next level of proposal is from them and funding is from them. But I don't know that we'll be privy to that
No, all of this is a huge sense of urgency because look, the last one was 9 years ago. And quite obviously, as far as a patient goes, and I'm a patient, I've seen absolutely no changes. In
Nothing.
fact, it's gotten worse.
Yeah, I've seen nothing useful come out of that in our patients at all.
Yeah.
I've never seen a single patient that's come to me and said, "Oh, I really benefited from having the DSCAP pathway.
Yeah.
My practitioner got me quickly and diagnosed me fast and knew what to do because of that."
Yeah.
Not even close.
No. Just speaking one before we leave that one, look, your pets and animals, especially dogs, are sentinels to tick-borne infections. I mean, we know more about our animals in Australia and ticks and the infections that they carry. But look, humans are mammals as well. We're going to get infected just the same. We may not get the same species. Like there is research I've read that says, it's impossible. They say impossible that the Ehrlichia canis cannot transfer to a human. But what if we get another form of Ehrlichia or another?
Or the Ehrlichias are so clever. The canis has an outer surface protein change, or it changes its mechanism of attachment in some way. This is what this is evolution. Things evolve to find more hosts. So they've got more homes, so they can be a more successful species. They're constantly driving to mutate, to evolve, to adapt. So
it may not be that species, but it's another one, within its same kind of cousin or something or other as well. I mean, we've got cousins of rickettsia, which is like Rocky Mountain spotted fever. The Queensland tick typhus is very, very close on a scale, the RNA, DNA analysis. It's like its close cousin. So, and people in America have died from Rocky Mountain spotted fever. In the early days, people have died from rickettsia in Australia too.
Absolutely. Thankfully, some of my sickest patients are Rocky Mountain spotted fever or Queensland spotted fever, like some of my sickest patients, and they'll get that initial flu-like symptoms. So,
well, hello, that was me on my holiday.
Absolutely. So for you guys, if we get more information about what are the symptoms of tick-borne diseases into GPs and actually follow that recommendation one, then that can save for you, 23 years of suffering.
Yeah, it took 17 years. Thanks very much. Hence my passion for doing this. Okay, so number 3, the committee recommends the Department of Health and Aged Care consult medical practitioners and patient stakeholder groups to develop a term to replace DSCAT, debilitating symptom complex attributed to ticks. That removes the stigma that is felt by patients, provides clarity for medical practitioners. Excellent. I call for that. Absolutely. All of us call for that. I mean, it was a ridiculous name. They said it wasn't supposed to be a diagnosis. I can quite honestly say that it's what ended up being people. I'm called a DSCAT patient because the testing here for me in Australia has been negative. So they call me, well, we think you've got something from ticks. We don't know what, but can't do anything about it. Too bad.
Yeah.
And yet my overseas testing plenty of times has showed, which brings us
we'll get to that later.
We'll get that.
We'll get to that as we go through the full report.
That would be interesting. Look, simply come back with tick-borne diseases. That's what should be the heading. We've got
vector-borne
heading in the website saying vector-borne diseases, and we've got mosquito-borne diseases, we've got tick-borne diseases, we've got flea-borne diseases, we've got bed bugs, we've got chiggers, we've got all of these can carry infections. So under the heading of vector-borne diseases, you simply break it down into the different bugs. Might be the simplest and easiest.
Also then being very clear in this naming that there is the acute phase and the chronic phase of these diseases as well, and that symptom presentation is different.
I think they suggested, or they came to the term that there is a chronicity. Like chronic Lyme, let's term the overseas chronic Lyme, is not recommended by official CDC and the World Health or anything. And yet there is a chronicity to COVID. There's a chronicity to Ebola. There's a chronicity to all of these other infections. So why there isn't a chronicity to somebody who hasn't been treated properly and effectively and efficiently and fully at the early stages, the acute stages, they go on to get chronic complications, which are layered on top of reactivation of other viruses, other bacteria.
Absolutely. An immune system that's not functioning isn't protecting you from all the normal stuff that humans are exposed to every day. And so, of course, you're going to end up with a bucket list of infections that your immune system didn't protect you from. Needs to be acknowledged in so many conditions. Perhaps it's up to 30% of the CFS-ME is a post-viral. So is that not the chronic presentation of that acute EBV, mono, as it might be called in America? Is that not the chronic long condition of it?
Look,
And we need to be extending our viewpoint on a lot of these infections.
yeah.
And that comes down to understanding IgG, IgM as well, that old antibody belief that, well, if it's IgG, you've just seen it in the past. If it's a very high number, your body's still dealing with it. Keep saying, oh, well, you saw it a while back, therefore it's not the problem. Your immune system doesn't work like that.
No. I mean, if you've still got titers, and mine were 512, I mean, that's you can get higher, but that's definitely an infection.
Yeah, absolutely. Your body's still focusing on that right now. And then if you're not seroconverting properly, the reason you're not clearing it is because you're not making the IgMs to get rid of it properly.
Yeah.
You're just dealing with the inflammatory part of it.
And the IgG and IgM works different in a chronic stage as well.
Absolutely. Well, the reason that our overseas testing gets denied here because our GPs are trained to say, oh, well, IgG it's in the past, don't worry about it. And then we get this overseas Lyme testing and tick testing that says IgG in very high numbers. We need to look at that. And your local GP just goes, oh, that doesn't mean anything. Well, where did they get it from then if they've never been overseas? Is that not another question to ask? And they've got all these tick-borne diseases? But side note.
Yeah, the interesting thing is that when we do get bitten by something, it's a triggering mechanism. And that's where if your immune system is greatly compromised, some people can fight it off. There's people who can get bitten and infected, but not symptomatic. So they hold the infection. And it's only later on down the track that they can become symptomatic from that. I mean, that's what was told to me from an infectious disease doctor who I eventually saw, and he's one of the well-respected ones, and he looked after me very, very well. But there was still a limitation in I guess, his understanding or what he was allowed to say, whatever. But he believed that my Lyme disease from overseas, from my travels in 1994 from Asia, and of course we do know that there are Borrelia burgdorferi, senso lato infections in through Asia. So my testing came back from 2 overseas labs, which he agreed with, one especially from Germany, said it was positive. He said, well, you've been bitten by a tick overseas. And I said, but I didn't really get sick to 2003. He said, well, that's probably because I fell down the stairs and broke my leg. That's another triggering thing. So you can have trauma. You could have...
It's so often trauma. It's divorce. It's financial hardship. It's car accidents. It's another infection of some kind that kicks your butt. And then the reactivation occurs. Absolutely. Absolutely. And my immune system keeps all things under wraps. But how many modern humans have healthy immune systems? We don't move enough. We don't eat well enough. We don't see enough sunshine. We're not connected to community in the way that our nervous systems need to. We're stressed. And stressed immune systems, fight, flight, freeze, fawn, is not reproduce, repair, digest, sleep. It does not activate the immune system when we're in stress state constantly. We all reactivate now. Of course, we can't deal with these chronic conditions in the same way we could when we didn't have the level of modern stresses in the environment.
Yeah. So you raised a very valid point that is a fact that you can have these infections from previous travels from years in the past. And people have been posting this on the community groups and said, look, I was bitten as a teenager. And they're now in their 50s and 60s and they're still sick from this. And they've been struggling all their lives, but now they're kind of really hit with it. So it can lay dormant. It can raise its head again. They can go into remission. And that's where this relapsing kind of concept comes in as well. And there is a relapse, and there's a relapsing Borrelia, which is more likely what they think is in Australia rather than the Lyme Borrelia. There's a relapsing Borrelia. But
my clinical belief here, looking at the way patients' symptoms are and the treatments they respond to, I believe that New South Wales, Southern Queensland, that the ticks there have something that is so clinically identical to Borrelia burgdorferi that I don't think it is a tick-borne relapsing fever kind. I think WA, we definitely have tick-borne relapsing fever here. I see patients that have a 28-day relapse, 29-day relapse, but there is something in that New South Wales to Hervey Bay in southern Queensland. There is something there that is identical to Borrelia burgdorferi, and you send it overseas to labs and it tests as Borrelia burgdorferi and the symptom picture is identical. Whereas the Victorian patients, the Tassie patients, it's a different presentation. I think that is more likely to be a tick-borne relapsing fever, something there.
Yeah.
We've got lots of Borrelias here, and we need to start naming them.
Yeah. I just did a post the other day on the public Ticna group about there's 5 or 6 Borrelias they've found, and I put the research of that in there as well. I mean, the first one was 1965 with a Queensland Borrelia queenslandica.
Yeah.
Interesting that they injected one of the people who worked with the Borrelia and he didn't get sick. And therefore, the N of 1 said you can't get sick from that particular thing, which really is not
amazing.
That's not scientific. It's not very ethical as well, is it?
That's not science.
No, that's not ethical.
It's probably the way we're doing science in the 60s, though. And in lots of third world countries around the world, it's possibly the way we're still doing science. But certainly we were. The Queensland Ag Department had a position statement, it doesn't anymore, that farmers need to be careful of mice plagues because mice plagues transmit Borrelia.
Interesting.
Whereas they don't have that on their little website anymore. But 7 years ago they did.
Guess what I went through as a geologist when I was working as a geologist in South Australia? Huge mice plagues.
And mice bites.
Yeah,
and mice feces. There's something. Mm-hmm.
Another
maybe
thing
maybe that was your problem.
Well, I never considered that. I was never sick at the time, but who knows if I was.
You're a healthy young man.
I don't know. I'll have to do some research on that one, but interesting.
Yes.
Many things. Yeah. I've always thought, is it only a tick that can carry certain things? I mean, I know they say that there is in certain kinds. There's graphics online where people say, "Oh, it could be any goddamn thing," and I'm going, "Well, I haven't found the research for it yet."
I think ticks are just the thing that moves it from one to the other.
Yeah.
Whereas they got it from somewhere. I mean, yeah, they get it from their mamas too, but they got it from the kangaroo. They got it from the deer. They got it from, and then they transmitted it to another deer in the next bite.
Oh, that's host to host.
Human. Yes.
From a tick to a human, is there other vectors that can also carry Borrelia? And they, in Germany, there are mosquitoes, certain types of mosquitoes that can carry it, but they haven't proven that it transfers it. It hasn't got the capability of transferring it. Although people,
I just can't see how it doesn't when we know that mosquitoes are excellent vectors. But again, the blood stored in their little whitey part dumps.
Yeah, in the scale of impossible, possible, probable, and definite. It's in terms of possible, and we definitely need more research on it. You can't rule it out 100%, but that's why we do need the research constantly. Speaking of research in Japan, when I was talking with Mackenzie Kwok in one of the videos we've recorded, Japan is constantly funded permanently. That's all they do. His department just goes out and researches ticks and preserves some of the ticks that they want to preserve as well, but find out where the ticks are, where the infections are, where they're spreading to as well.
And Japan is a country that we trust the science that comes out of them.
Yeah.
Like when I was reading a study on fraudulent science being done, probably shouldn't be trusting science that comes out of Egypt because it has a high likelihood of being fraudulent. But we trust studies that come from Japan. We trust studies that come from Switzerland and Germany and Austria and America. We're trusting these countries. Why can't we also trust that what they're finding is valid?
Yeah. I think all good science, though, should be questioned by,
Absolutely.
people as well.
That is science, isn't it? It's got to stand up to rigor.
Yep, it does. So, recommendation 3, yes. What they'll come up with, I don't know. Whether they'll allow the patients to come back with some suggestions, like what I've said. We can't let them come up with another made-up name. We already
open it up to consultation again. Give us some names, and then can we vote?
I mean, it seems to be that the governments like to come up with names because even when the patient community came up with the name of long COVID, and that spread like wildfire, the government come back and says, no, we want to call it PASC. I mean, it seems ridiculous. I mean, all of this is about making patients' lives better. That's all we want, So
adopt one of the international terms then. We don't have to invent the wheel on everything.
Yeah. I think the simplest is vector-borne disease, tick-borne disease, other bug-borne diseases, and simply leave it at that and realise it. And the doctors need to realise that these could be triggers. Functional medicine doctors who are very, very proficient at understanding that there can be mold and so many other layers to this and not just ticks. That would be an important other thing to educate them about as well, which if we can get acids involved, that would be fantastic. They tried to get involved, but I think they they didn't end up doing what they were supposed to do in the first place through no fault of their own, I believe. So, but recommend.